Up until the beginning of the first half of the last century, the 20th century, all goods were made using human and animal muscle power, that is, a plane, a saw, either a person or a horse, plowed the furrow, and now everything is done with electric traction. Back then, as options for anti-value, one could take anything. One could take grain, and during the reign of Hammurabi, there was such an attempt. One could take sheep, but they took gold. You reap what you sow. Remember, Boratino Polić sowed coins, and Fox Alice and Cat Basil, and he, meaning charmed them. So just like that, indeed, these very same Fox Alice and Cat Basil have charmed our leaders. The gold standard can no longer be restored. As soon as all goods and services began to be produced using electric traction, electricity should become the basis for currency equivalence. Let's put it this way. In country X, there is a lot of Sayano-Shushenskaya gas, while in country Y, there are only windmills who will produce more goods, probably who has more electricity. That's it. How to compare the exchange rate and other things. Here is a bun. It costs a ruble, let's say, and a brick. Energy has been expended on the loaf of bread. How to relate the cost of the loaf and the brick. How much electricity has been spent. To get a loaf of bread, you need to sow grain, which means spending gasoline on the seeder. Then you need to harvest with a combine. After that, you need to knead it in the bakery, bake it, that is, use electricity, and deliver it to the store. There, you have the cost of a loaf of bread and the brick. You also need to extract the clay, heat it, and fire it at the brick factory, which also requires electricity. Therefore, depending on how much is spent on a loaf of bread, a brick, a table, a suit, fabric, everything can be measured in electricity. That is why, moving forward, when we consider it, we can now transition from the gold standard to just electricity. But it would be fair. And we, the Rothschilds, Morgans, Oppenheimers, and so on, we are parasitizing on the labor of others. We need fairness. We shouldn't. Here we invented fixing. What is it, Rothschild? Fixation. Twice a day, in one of the London banks, an international mafia gathering of 5-7. People is held, chaired by Rothschild, and these people, at their own discretion, having very specific goals in each country, set the price of gold per troy ounce. And now remember what we talked about a few minutes ago. When the situation in the state is one way, the elite buys gold, and when it is another, the elite sells gold. Therefore, knowing the volumes of gold sales and purchases in different countries, they understand how to regulate the price per the troy ounce. That's it. Therefore, they can uplift and save any country. They can crush it like cockroaches. And the goals regarding each country are also clear. There are the Tahanovites and the Zagradovites, and there are... That's it. Here is the role of fixing. Therefore, one of the Rothschilds presides, and there are participants from 5 major London banks and the Zurich Gnomes, that is, from Switzerland again. And the main conclusion is from what we have reviewed about the history of money. It is important that here, everything we have said, the division of the conceptual boundary of invariance in the oscurant and means of payment allows us to distinguish cheap mahars and their hierarchy, while political economy considers them as 2 different functions of money. This is where the mistake lies, very generalized information about the state of the national economy. This division allows us to distinguish between the cheap mashers and their hierarchy of accepted tiers, and the hierarchy of their corporation. Political economy views them as functions of money and hierarchy. Here is the exchange product scheme in front of you. What is presented on it? There is the market of the production sphere. You see a large one in the center. On the right is the market of final consumption, which is the sphere of the market for personal paid consumption. On the left is the state apparatus, which manages everything. And at the top are hired personnel and all non-entrepreneurs, while at the bottom are entrepreneurs who are not subordinate to the state. Arrows indicate the flow of money, credits, investments, salaries, and various consumption funds, such as, and other related financial resources. Within the market of the production sphere, three powerful branches need to be highlighted. Here is the food sector, what people need, which includes agriculture, fishing, and the food industry, and it goes to the market of final consumption. The extraction of electricity, its processing, production, and also goes to the market, the extraction of raw materials, after which the production of various materials takes place, from which means of production are made, thus leading to products consumed by humans. And it also goes to the market. And all of this is accompanied by transportation, communication, and science. There are, you see, free public consumption funds, schools, healthcare, and art. Well, take a close look at this scheme. And regarding this scheme, you see, products flow in one direction, while money, means of payment, flow in the other direction. The arrows are drawn at the top. Therefore, this scheme is not some kind of socio-economic formation, but rather a functional scheme. And this scheme includes the slave system, where private populations have means of production. In the conditions of feudalism, part of the population relates to the means of production during the period of people fulfilling feudal obligations. In the conditions of capitalism, all people are either hired personnel or entrepreneurs, while in conditions of pseudo-socialism, everyone is equal. That is, indeed, this scheme is suitable for any system. The scheme can also project global interstate division of labor in the aggregate of transnational corporations, as well as intrastate division of labor. Here, by the circulation of flows, you can allocate products in one direction and means of payment in another. Here is your scheme. You can take a closer look. You can pause your VCR or computer. This is impossible to do in the Marxist-Leninist form. Why? Because in Marxism and Leninism there are the production of means of production and the production of consumer goods, so-called Group A and Group B, and the exchange of capital between them. And where in this scheme of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels are the sectors that serve Group A and Group B? Although there are markets, production spheres, and consumption spheres, to see only the production of means of production and the production of consumer goods, and not to see management, not to be involved. In the multi-sectoral complex, what is this? Ordinary nonsense. Therefore, this scheme of Marx and Engels is a fiction, but this scheme underlies the entire Marxist-Leninist political economy and explains all these processes. This is also a reason why everything collapsed. The scheme includes product flows and means of payment, then it will already be a scheme of the credit and financial system imposed on the sectors of the national economy. And then it becomes clear why nothing connects the credit and financial system with real production and distribution of products, except for the objective statistics of human subjectivism. Why? Because both real products and means of payment pass through one person. And all of this, each society has its own statistics of subjectivism, its own credit and financial system, and therefore, guided by this subjectivism, one can enter a mode of either self-regulation, guided by, as we said, wisdom, knowledge, homegrown understanding, and so on. Or it can be through irresponsible advice from abroad and copying laws from developed countries. Speaking of the water cycle in nature, one must remember Kirchhoff's law for means of payment in the credit and financial system. Karl Marx, not electricity, where it flows from, attempted to refute this matter by imposing the concept of constant capital in the structures of society. And in closed systems, what is the total monetary profit? Equal to emission of means of payment, how much new money is injected, and the loss of means of payment, that is, how much is withdrawn from worn-out banknotes that have become tattered and frayed. Therefore, further on, you see everything is very simple. Any private profit is undoubtedly always someone else's loss. And now remember again this scheme that we just looked at here on this scheme. If something has decreased in one sector, or rather profit has occurred in the form of money, then that amount of money has decreased in another sector. That's all. In other words, there are no miracles. Therefore, remember the scheme we discussed from here. Profit of any industry is the private profit of that industry, and the losses of other industries are one side, and on the other side, this loss affects the solvency of the industry. Why? Because the industry that has no money falls out of the social association of labor. But if the industry has fallen out and its products are necessary, then its absence leads to the collapse of the entire national economy. Those who need the products of this industry. By the way, if you think about these strikes that occurred, they also contribute to the collapse. Why? Because here are the miners, unknowingly fulfilling the tasks of the world behind the scenes. When, remember, Yeltsin in Mezhdurechensk said, "I will lie on the tracks, promising the miners something." So they were, the tracks. As a result, there is no coal, and the power plants are idle. The power plants are idle, which means the blast furnaces are not operating. The furnaces are operating, but there is no steel. No steel, no combines. No combines, no grain. That's it. Therefore, they allow these strikes. That's all. They need it. It is a means of control. What kind? Achievements of the collapse of the national economy of the country. Therefore, based on what we have considered, the state is obliged to implement a directive targeted policy of taxes, subsidies, and grants for the people. The state is obliged to ensure the effective use of capacities in all sectors. To ensure employment for the population, there should be no unemployment, because we have considered that without work, a worker is without money, and he falls out of life. Right now on television I see, I don't know which one, they are showing these boys, young men. Of course we can judge them, but let's think about the cause and effect relationships. There is no work in his area. Parents are unemployed. From the village, what to do? There is no money. One has to live. He goes to Moscow to earn some money. In Moscow, one needs to find a job, but there migrant workers are being expelled. Where to? But he wants to eat. He snatched a mobile phone from some girl. He did it badly, it's clear. To the police. To the police where? To prison. Is he a criminal? Well, a criminal. But who made him a criminal? And the situation in the country that was deliberately created has led to this. And this Russian guy is going to prison. What will he learn in prison? What? Something good, perhaps. This is how they oppress all of us together. There should be no unemployment. And the government that does all this is criminal towards the people. Not these Russian guys who are sent to prison. Therefore, eradicating crime and fighting against these people is pointless. We need to eliminate the root cause of crime. And the root cause of crime lies in this shameless, inhumane concept. The third task, we need to eliminate inter-industry competition, because it is foolish in this holistic scheme when a village competes with the space industry. Madness, just madness. If the government does not do all this and does not understand, then it is either anti-people, which is a lesser measure, or blasphemous, which is a greater measure. And there is no forgiveness for all these state officials. And if our market-oriented individuals, having pushed aside our planners, organized inter-industry competition, it means that both are equally foolish, as it is clear to everyone that people engaged in agriculture and those involved in space exploration cannot compete with each other for the standard of living. Competition between industries. This is an important thought. Competition between industries is competition among people for the standard of living. But what does that mean? This is the instigation of people against each other. Here is the principle of divide and rule. Within, state competition and transitions seamlessly into global intra-industry competition. It's very simple. We have already said that for the American farmer to thrive, the Russian Ivan in the village of Sidorovka must be poor. That's all. What do you think? Can't we produce these chicken legs in our vast lands? We can. We live differently than we work. And not only because of that, but also because of how we are managed. We need to understand this, because people's labor needs to be organized. You can grow it in the village of Sidorovka, but how will you sell it? And who will take care of it? Therefore, it is necessary to manage the national economy of the country. The elimination of relationships that we have declared is only possible in an anti-totalitarian society. It will not be possible to do this in this little pyramid. So, what is this about again? No private problem will be solved until we change the concept of societal development. That is, this destructive concept needs to be replaced with our concept of divine sovereignty. What is a price list? There is no understanding of this either in the West or here. It is believed that a price list is a list of prices for products of a certain nomenclature according to the standards and conditions of their production and delivery to the consumer. But this only addresses the external side of the phenomenon. Where does the price come from? Complete satisfaction of societal needs leads to the disappearance of prices. Let's think about it. There used to be no paid parking in Moscow. You could leave your car wherever you wanted. Now you can't stop anywhere. All parking is paid. Why? Because there is no space. That is, when the price of a product appears, it is when there is a shortage. Remember that joker Rakin, who makes these jokers laugh even now, while the whole country is crying. These jokers are not such simple people, just so you know. Because when a malicious, rude, and unpleasant phenomenon in society is mocked, but does not disappear, it becomes habitual for people. What is there to laugh at? When the mocked evil remains, mocked evil becomes habitual for people. That is why a monument to Charlie Chaplin was erected in Switzerland. Because he made this abomination of Hitler. It seems funny, right? But think about it. It's the same with our jokers here. So they seem to talk about serious things and make these things habitual. Well, that's how it turned out. Life doesn't change like this Pozna. Maybe some other times will come. That is, there is no control in their understanding. They say everything goes on its own. Nonsense. A kaleidoscope, remember. Worldview. That's what they impose on people. But why am I saying this about Rakin? Remember, he sat disguised as a Georgian, eating a sandwich with some caviar. Said, let everything always be good everywhere, but let something always be missing. Scarcity. Do you remember about scarcity? That's why there is a cellar of air in the fantasist Belyaev's work. Now we don't pay for air, do we? But soon we will have to pay for air. Very soon there will be paid roads, paid sidewalks to walk on. Well, it's heading that way. We live not as we work, but as we are managed. Soon we will have to pay to enter the forest and so on. Why? It's called a concept. Do you want to live by this concept? Well, live. We don't want to. We will achieve that this concept exists. But for this, it is important that the complete satisfaction of society's needs leads to the disappearance of prices. But as soon as scarcity appears, prices for previously free things immediately emerge. Therefore, the general price list consists of three specific parts. 2. The price list of the market for personal paid consumption. 3. The price list of the market for production. 3. The price list of wages. It generates both the first and the second. Let's consider the first. If there is a fixed fund for personal paid consumption, then the better the product nomenclature. The better the production volumes meet the needs, and the lower the prices, the higher the rates of price decline. And then, the higher the quality of management and self-regulation of the national economy as a whole. But then, if there is a decrease in prices, demand increases. There is another side to the coin. There is a price reduction. And then cheap products become waste raw materials for the production of something expensive. Well, for example, was the commander of a regiment. Bread then was wiped by soldiers from the table after lunch and fed to pigs as waste. That is, the peasant grew it. Why? Bread was cheap in canteens, remember, and it was treated as waste raw material. But now it's different. The bread is sliced, in plastic bags, everything. Well, this is just an illustration. So what comes from this? The nullification of the pre-consumer everything is free and everyone gets according to their needs requires what? The liquidation of the crowd of elitism. That is this morally bankrupt system, completely different culture, and the upbringing of a different culture with different needs which will be discussed further. So, what is the conclusion from this? The pre-consumer reflects in the economy the vector of management errors in society as a whole, not just the vector of economic errors. That is what neither Gaidars nor all these Nemtsovs, Kakmanads and others understand. That there are quite specific people standing behind the machines. And they believe that the economy is these machines, screws and bolts working. No, it is all together in combination. It is necessary to change both the morality of a person and their view on work, consumption and relationships. This is not studied in economics. Price list of the market in the production sphere. It is a mirror reflection of the first price list in the production sphere. The mirror is the price list of cost, qualification level, and the integrity of the staff, and the third is the salary price list. It is somewhat deformed under the influence of socially recognized subordination. Wages are the duration of work time. There is also contract payment, i.e. piecework payment upon delivery of products. The ratio of salaries of different levels of specialists to the average level indicates their shortage. So what is the conclusion? The price list reflects the errors of self-governance in society, within the economy. The errors are reflected in the formation of needs, such as in the development of production capacities and also in production management in various ways. And these errors are reflected in the price list. In this case, the errors become apparent, like consumer competition. This type of competition is often referred to as a shortage, and it is correctly named. This competition is often concealed by a pyramid. The pyramid of monetary wealth of both members of society and product-producing firms, and this pyramid gives competition a legalized form according to the laws of value. In other words, it is believed that in the West there is everything. But in the West, for Rothschild, everything is one thing, while for the ordinary worker, everything is another. In other words, there are differences in the West. And these differences are not in desires, but in financial capabilities. Therefore, indeed, in the States, 5% of the population consumes almost more than 50% of the extracted oil, that is, energy resources. The planet Earth cannot sustain the American way of life, which is why globalizers they talked about this during the lecture. They do not understand this. They will not allow 95% to live according to the American way of life. That is why America is being brought down, because it is a model, so it must be made a non-model, empire of evil, to change the reference point. That is indeed the lighthouse must go out, our lighthouses. And externally, there is clearly competition among industries for monetary profit. And all these market people buzz about this, saying that it is the engine of progress. In reality, the main thing is consumer competition. What the credit and financial system and the price list owe their existence to is the competition among consumers. Therefore, the price list is a vector of error, and it is inseparable from the credit and financial system. What is the conclusion from this? The credit and financial system is a means capable of ensuring the stability of exchange processes in public production and consumption amid erroneous self-management of society. Or in other words, the credit and financial system is a means of distributing products in society amid its known shortage relative to societal demands. From what we have discussed, we can say how we were led to the restructuring. Here is a table in front of you. Here are depicted 3 periods in the life of our society: Stalinism, stagnation, and restructuring. And look, here at the sections, commodity money turnover in percentages and in billions of rubles, household savings and the level of inflation such as... And look, in the 1940s and 1950s under Stalin, the level of inflation fluctuated between 4 to 7%. In the years of stagnation, doubling occurred in 10 years at 1430, 57%. And during the restructuring, doubling happened in 5 years. What is this? This is deferred demand in bags. That is, these traders and all those who, in our trade, as Raikin said, let something be lacking. All these heads of departments, those sitting in the front row. This deferred demand, instead of providing credit with goods to the population, at one time there was an attempt, when goods were given to people on credit, to liquidate it, but then this was cut off. We were prepared for restructuring, and this deferred demand was all legalized. What accumulated in bags with the nomenclature dealers and all these heads of departments, they have now legalized. It is necessary to understand that the economy cannot be economical by itself, as we were taught, more precisely, economical. Management is the main thing in economic processes. Management of economic processes can be effective. And management is conducted according to a certain concept. There are either two concepts or one aimed at providing people so that they can master the opportunities granted to them by God and realize their ideas regarding the entire super system as a whole. Or, as is now the case, in the interests of a handful who developed the concept of a global slave system in which we continue to live. Therefore, indeed, no private problem in the country will be solved till we change the concept of life in our society. Nothing will be achieved in the economy either if we do not change the overall concept of our country's development.